Facebook. I said what's up before Facebook even started, so all you heard was Facebook. So what's up, Facebook? Happy spring, although it doesn't feel like it. It's about 40 degrees here, I think, in the great state of North Carolina. And I've got a quick and dirty live broadcast for you, but more important than that, this live broadcast will eventually become a podcast. And I'm excited about that because I've got a colleague that I'm talking here today, and we've got a really interesting perspective for you. You know, we do a lot of things here that are sort of countercultural in the context of diet culture. This will be a foray into that type of mindset. Before we get too deep into it, I want to introduce and welcome Mark, my colleague Mark Breedon. Mark, thanks for being here, my friend. Good to have you.
Thank, thanks for having me. I was going to say where I am. I live in Canada, so we have full snow right now. Definitely doesn't feel like spring just happened.
Oh
But no,
no,
I'm happy to be here. No, I
yeah.
appreciate it.
We try not to say the S word here in the South, Mark. So keep the snow talk to yourself, my friend.
Okay,
Just want to point that out to you. That's
I'll
sacrilegious
keep
here.
I'll keep that in Canada.
Yeah, gosh, I can't imagine how cold it is. In any case, Mark and I actually met on an app that maybe some of you guys heard of. It's called Clubhouse. It was pretty big that pandemic year. It's all audio.
Mhm.
So we used to contribute to what they called rooms on Clubhouse, which is basically live broadcasts that were only audio. And we connected there. I took a liking to his vibe. I took a liking to what he does specifically in the context of his training. But I want to give him the opportunity to properly introduce himself for this live broadcast. When we do the podcast, I will have introduced him before it started. But Mark, just sort of tell the people who you are and what you do.
But yeah, so for one, it was a pleasure getting to know you on Clubhouse. I'm no longer on there, but like I felt like we had really good conversations, and I appreciated what you shared. Like genuinely, I thought you were one of the best contributors to those rooms, and it was nice to get to know you over that time.
Thanks so
Um,
much.
yeah, of course. And then so for myself, I am what's known as like a weight neutral trainer. So for people who aren't aware of what that is, instead of focusing on weight loss or ways to use training to change your body, like via aesthetics, I only focus on making you stronger, making you healthier, like helping you enjoy the process. But like, I don't do anything that's like weigh-ins or before and after photos. I never comment on the weight or the look of my clients at all, or like make any positive or negative about that. Like my training is 100% about making you stronger and helping you enjoy training, which I think is probably what makes me different from other trainers who usually have some weight loss aspect to their training, whereas mine is completely zero.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like out in the universe, I'm hearing a collective as people start to understand what we meant in the preface to this conversation. Because a lot of people have probably never heard of that. I want to get back to that, obviously,
For sure.
because
Yeah.
that's interesting. But let's start at the beginning because I'm a comic book nerd, Mark. I don't know if you know this, but I'm all about the origin story, and I always ask the same two first questions because I think there's really an interesting sort of duality to all trainers. So first, for most of us that train, there's something that got us into fitness personally, right?
Mhm.
So let's start there, and then we'll move on to what got you to the point where you wanted to give fitness away. Don't spoil it.
No, 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 I won't.
So first, how did you find yourself doing like your first ever exercise routine, and what was the reason for it in your mind at the time?
So it definitely was not the weight neutral approach for sure. For me, it really started, I would say, like end of high school ish. And really, my story is my high school girlfriend of 2 years broke up with me. And I kind of saw exercise and training as a way to get some self esteem and confidence back. And at the time, I was thinking, just a bigger biceps meant like a better life. Very aesthetic focused for sure. And that was probably my approach for years. And I just kind of used training as a way to like, I don't like how I look or who I am as a person. I'm going to use training to solve that. And it did, but not really in the way that I anticipated. That's really how I started. And it was only after like years of weight loss, aesthetic focused training that I eventually moved over to weight neutral, which we can talk about that transition if you want. But I would say when I started, entirely shallow and completely about like just I just felt bad about myself and thought having big arms would solve that problem.
You first of all, thank you for sharing that. It's really informative, and it's going to inform a lot of this conversation. Also, you dropped a, a juicy nugget, a juicy steak nugget in your description, and I'm like a wild dog on a bone, man. I got to go back and get that because you said it did solve things, but not in the way I thought. I can't leave that
Sure.
dangling. What? Give us some insight of what you mean by that.
So I would say I tried changing how I looked to feel better about myself for 5, 6 years, something
Hmm.
along those lines. And honestly, like even though there was physical changes and I put on muscle, got stronger, etc., I found that I just ended up comparing myself to new people, and it only really like the comparison trap was still there. I still didn't really feel that great about myself, so it didn't solve the issues I wanted to. And then I had a coach who recommended that I tried powerlifting at the time. So that was my entry into like true strength training. And getting into that was great. It was a huge eye opener for me. And I also felt that like what I noticed is that it was no longer about what training made me look like. It was about what my body was capable of, which was a really cool thing to see. And it made me realize I could accomplish things I didn't realize I could accomplish, which at the time was, lifting a certain weight or being able to do a certain thing with my body, as opposed to like, you know, how shredded I was at the time or like whatever it might have been at that point. And so when I say it changed who I would say entering into the strength training world allowed me to value myself beyond what I looked like, as
Hmm.
well as like proving myself wrong in a very positive way.
Right.
Because I think strength training is really, really good for that, where a lot of people go into it not realizing what they're going to accomplish. And then you kind of prove yourself wrong in a very positive way. So when
Hmm.
I say it changed me, I think it just it opened me up to what I was actually capable of and like where my value was as a person, which is not like what I look like or what I'm supposed to look like, etc. So that when I say it changed me, I would say like entering the strength training world is probably where I had the most change, as opposed to the weight loss aesthetics world, where I think I was always waiting for that change to happen, but it didn't. It never really came. It didn't solve things in the way I wanted to solve.
I think what you said so brilliantly there, and something that we don't notice as often as we should, is that even when we do change in whatever way we believe is necessary in our lives, there's just a whole new set of people now to compare yourself to,
Yeah,
right? You get to be a millionaire, and there are millionaires who are 100 millionaires. You
yeah.
get
You're
there, and
still
they're a
poor.
billionaire.
You never
Yeah,
get there. Yeah.
right. You never. It's. There is no actual destination. That's so brilliant, man. Put that on a shirt, right? Write a Twitter quote. I mean, really, that's something that I think people don't see in their future. That when you get there, there's more people there.
There's more people. There's new people to compare yourself to. I was comparing myself to other classmates and their success, and oh, like that person's more muscular than I am, or they're more shredded, or it just like even with physical changes, it was like because I probably in high school I was probably like 135,
Same,
5'9", like not a big guy. And then I got up to like 165 ish.
same.
And like so even with those physical changes, I didn't feel better. Like it
Right.
wasn't, even though I like obviously, I physically changed for sure, but it was not the answer to the problems that I was hoping for. And I went down that journey for 5+ years, but I think that there are people I've talked to who've been down that journey for decades,
Same.
where they think if only they could get to that number or that look, that they would like finally be happy. And I just think that's, I don't want to jump the gun too much, but I would
Right.
say that
Right.
that's like I don't agree with that, and we can
That-
talk about that
yeah.
later.
That's on me, man. I made you go down that route.
No, no, all
So
good.
so let's take that shift, right? So we're talking about the origin story. We know why you started exercising, but what I love so much, I love the second part of any coach's origin story, which is what made you decide I need to give wellness to other people. I want to give fitness away. I want to
Mhm.
teach it, give it, show people what it's like. What made that shift for you?
I think for me, it's I've always wanted to do something that helps people. Not even like in a job sense, but even in just like, am I doing things that are actually benefiting people's lives has always been really
Hmm.
valuable to me. And for me, this is the area that I know best to help people. That this is like how like what is something that I can provide that is unique that other people aren't necessarily doing, as well as like I will enjoy and like see the fulfillment in helping others. And I think for me, training people for strength and training people without weight loss seems to be one, like kind of like you mentioned, like a lot of people don't even know what weight neutral training is, right? Like a lot of people meet me and I'm like the first guy who's doing this.
Right.
And like I'm like a rarity still for sure. And then for me, it's like I want to open people's eyes to just a different option, I think. I think there's going to be people who still want to go the weight loss aesthetics route, and that's fine. Like that's what they think is the best choice for them. Like they should do that.
Hmm.
I want to at least let them know that like this option is on the table, and that they can benefit, and that if there are going to be some people who like, you know what, like the weight on the scale doesn't do it for me, like it's a bad relationship, I'm not happy with it, I would rather just focus on strength. And like I just want people to know that like that option exists, that there's like you can go that route if you want to go that route. Whereas I've talked to people in their 50s, 60s, 70s who like always assumed training was to lose weight and only to lose weight.
Hmm.
So that's I think that's where I have landed on why I do fitness as like a job.
Right.
Because I think like that's something that I think isn't as much fitness content as there is out there. There's very little weight neutral content, and I just want people to know that it exists. Like that's
Right.
kind of the yeah.
That makes sense. So, speaking of the people that you want to know that weight neutral training exists, you've got somewhat of a specific population. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think you're yeah you
Yeah.
can you possibly can relate to this, Rodney?
Yeah,
Like you're
probably.
saying.
Tell me what's the group, what's the population that you find yourself most passionate about working with?
Ooh, okay. So I work with pretty much exclusively women. Every now and then I get a guy who wants to work with me, but for the most
Mhm.
part, it is women. What I noticed for me is that my journey was very similar to the women that I was training back when I was at a commercial gym. So my journey is I had low self esteem and confidence. Strength training helped build that up to where it is now.
Mhm.
I noticed that when I worked at a commercial gym and I was training women for strength, they went through a very similar journey where they came in unsure of themselves, not confident about how they feel. Maybe they should stick to light weights. Maybe they should stick to like toning and like maybe not the barbell, etc. And that for those who did focus on strength and what their body could do, it wasn't only that they enjoyed the training more, which helped you be more consistent, but that they felt more capable as human beings, that they realized that they were wrong about themselves in a positive way, and that they could accomplish more than they thought. That they were like, wow, like I just deadlifted my body weight. This is something I never thought I'd be able to do. And then they do it in like 2, 3 months. Like it's a really cool thing. And so when I focused on like my own online business, that to me made the most sense because I just happened to resonate more with that story than like the typical male story. Um, yeah, and I would say most passionate. I love working with beginners. I have trained athletes. I have trained like top level people. I like showing people that they're strong when they didn't realize that they were strong. That's a cool thing to see. That I'll have someone come in. Maybe they've never lifted weights before, or maybe it's only been classes and light weights, and seeing them like deadlift their body weight for the first time, or like do their first pull up, or something that they didn't think that they were going to do in their life, and then they accomplish that. I think that's the group that um, I'm very passionate about working with because I think that's a lot of people, and people really don't realize how strong they are until they actually get into strength training, and almost always exceed expectations, which is cool to see. It's like it's a fun journey to help out with.
100%. I'm going to call this section of the podcast. It's going to be a bad words incoming. So earmuffs out there if you're listening. I'm going to call this section "I shit you not," because I shit you not. I was on a podcast not more than 3 days ago, and the person interviewing me said, "What's your favorite thing about working with the people that you work with?" And I literally used the example of a deadlift.
Mhm.
It's on tape. You tell how old I am because I said tape. I literally said watching a woman deadlift her body weight, and for the first time, maybe ever, acknowledging the power that she has in her existence. It's like watching those videos where like the little baby who's hearing impaired gets the hearing aids for the first time and the mom says, "I love you, Justin," and they hear that for the first time. Like they're crying, the baby's crying, I'm crying watching
It's
it.
correct. Yeah, yeah.
It like if you can, and we didn't set up for me to ask this question, but if you can, sort of do your best to sort of encapsulate that situation, that feeling as a coach, or what you witness with the women that you coach when they have those moments. Can you just sort of, this is really hard to get a grasp on, but to the best of your ability, can you just sort of say what that's like?
No, that's a great question. I think the cool thing about strength training and you're showing them a new world. I think that's like something that they didn't grow up thinking they would do, most likely. And showing them that there was something they were capable of that they didn't realize before. That like they just brushed it off. That they were like, yeah, this is for young people, or this is for only athletes, or whatever it might be. And I think being able to show them like, no, 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 you are strong. Like we need to get you on a proper program. We need to get you consistent with training, all that kind of jazz. But if we can do that, you're going to accomplish things you never thought were possible. And I think realizing that you have more out there than you realize is incredible. Where like you are doing things you never thought you would do consistently, like easily. I think though that's such a unique feeling that I don't think we get in a lot of the rest of life. Where I've worked with people who like 40s, 50s are the first time they're lifting weights, as an example. And like I have a client who's 54 now. She didn't lift when she was younger. Now we're working on a 200-pound deadlift. She can do pull-ups for reps now. These are all things that like I know her growing up never thought that was going to happen. Didn't even like it wasn't even like on the radar. She's like, I'll just exercise to exercise, but like that's not my thing. And now she loves training because it's this whole other world that she grew up never thinking about that now she gets access to. And I think that's the big part of strength training that excites me is that like we're opening up a new world for you. We're showing you something that is awesome, that is badass, that makes you empowered, and maybe is something that you probably didn't think was going to be part of your life. So yeah, that's how I would describe it. I think it's yeah.
Yes, yes. It's as Disney would say, a new exciting point of
Oh, I should have said that. That was way better than what I said. They just start singing out of context.
I
That would have
can
been the
show you the world. But no, I get that, man. That's amazing, and I 100% agree. Having been a coach in that situation, 100% agree. It's like people find out there's an outer space and they never and
yeah,
they
yeah.
never knew it before. Like, wait,
And
what?
you're like, that's
There
been
are
there the
other
whole time.
planets?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. They've been there. They've literally been there the whole time. I love that, Mark. I want to follow that question up with something that's really pervasive in our industry, right? Sort of the concept of or. I've often said that I'm much more fond of and than I am of or, but
Mm,
in the context of what we do, we get a lot of there's bickering a lot of the
sure.
time. So if we look at two really prominent concepts right now, one probably extension of diet culture, and the other probably being a reaction to diet culture, we see this ongoing debate between the Hayes community, right? That's an acronym, healthy at every size. We refer to it as Hayes sometimes. And we've got the other side of that spectrum, like diet culture and diet culture not being simplified to something as specific as weight loss, but a spectrum of perceived societal expectation, I guess
Hmm.
would be the way to put that. And this debate rages on people on one side saying you're wrong for wanting to lose weight, which you already explained. That's not my deal. I'm not telling people what they should do with their
Yeah, it's
bodies.
not it's not
And
productive.
then people on the other side saying, no, at any size of a body that does not fit into societal standards, you're unhealthy, period. No
Hmm.
looking in the box. We're just going to look at the box, and we've decided you're not healthy because you look a certain way. What are your thoughts about that ongoing exchange of I'm right, you're wrong, et cetera, et cetera?
So I think here's the thing that's a challenge, which is like the online space in general, is that I think there's a lot of incentive to do like almost what's known as like dunking, where like you're not really debating, you're more just like talking. It's almost like two groups of friends talking behind each other's backs, except then they publish what they talked about. Where there's not actually a lot of conversation between like haze and weight loss people. It's more like weight loss people debunking health at every size, and then health at every size people like dunking on weight loss people and how they've been wrong all this time. I'm trying to do more things where I'm collaborating with weight loss people because
Hmm.
I think one, there is overlap that's worth discussing. And as well, I think the health at every size, like the movement's been around for a while, but it's definitely
Hmm.
more mainstream than it ever has been.
Right.
And I think when we have a new idea to the table, that it should be challenged.
Hmm.
Like, and I think when I say challenge, I don't mean like dunking on people and getting 400,000 likes on TikTok.
Right.
I mean, like, we should have those conversations because there's going to be some aspects of the movement that are actually identical to some weight loss coaching stuff. Like, there are weight loss coaches that are friends of mine where we agree on 95% of things, and it's really just
Hmm.
that 5% that we don't agree on.
Right.
And for those disagreements that exist, like, we should have those conversations. Like, we should talk about the research. We should talk about, like, is a plus size person for sure unhealthy? Can you be healthy without focusing on weight loss? Like, I think these are good conversations to have. I'm open to that debate for like pretty much anybody who wants to have that debate. Like, I'll be civil about it and kind of, I want to have that conversation.
Hmm.
Um, but right now I feel like we're just like two high school cliques, like dunking on each other, not really talking to each other. And I think it's good to have that conversation because I don't think either is going away at any point. I think, obviously people still want to lose weight. And then also like Hayes body positivity stuff is like still, it's picking up in interest.
Hmm.
So I think those conversations should be had, and I want to have those conversations. I wish they happened more as opposed to like just like reaction videos.
Right. Right. The reaction video is slowly killing any hope of a healthy population.
Yeah,
Because
unfortunately, yeah,
yeah,
and on one end, sorry to interrupt you there, but
that's all right.
I think part of it as well, and I'm almost going to blame the consumer as well on that, where two people agreeing or like finding common ground is just like less interesting content than like someone like react. It's just, there's a reason that people are going this route.
Mhm.
I don't think it's good for like society.
Right.
But I understand like kind of why people go. I think it's, yeah, but I'm hoping in the future we can find more common ground or at least like civil conversations as opposed to like just people dunking on each other for likes and follows, and yeah, just kind of go from
Right.
there.
Right. First of all, 100% agree. Um, you know, the conversations need to be had in conversational manners, right?
Yes.
Like, it's, instead of you're stupid and that doesn't work, which is what we get. But again, I agree with you that it drives sales probably more to find a corner, sit in it, and do a live broadcast about that corner, do
Yeah.
a reel about that corner, write a book about that corner, come out with a
Mhm.
diet that matches that corner. Uh, History is proven, but I love your approach here, and I hope that if and when those conversations happen, I'm able to share that space with you and get involved too, because I've always enjoyed your perspective and the level headedness of how you approach the human in front of you,
Mhm.
which is a gift for client that your clients get. I want to switch gears a little bit because I'm wondering for the women that are out there listening, whoever's listening, both of our target audience is the same, but for the women out there listening, are there things that you wish that they knew? Like, is there anything or several things that you wish? I just want women to understand this thing or
Mhm.
these things because they may unlock freedom for them in a way that diet culture is sort of binding them. Like there's
Right.
sort of a handcuffing nature to diet culture. Anything come to mind for you in that context?
I think the biggest misconception I see that I think holds people back is that when they hear health at every size, body positivity stuff, all that kind of jazz, that they assume it's like heavily on the feelings as opposed to actually about like health. And I think like that's one thing I want to talk about as well is that like yes, you are going like we're not focusing on the weight and the scale, but you're still going to be active. We still care about the habits. We still want you healthy. We just talk more about the behaviors to make you healthy as opposed to like that necessarily being the weight on the scale. I think that's like the first thing that I want to talk about. So for people who think it's like just feelings and that like we never focus on training, like that's not the case. For people who are wondering if it's right for them, I think you need to look at your relationship with the weight on the scale. If you find that the weight in the scale really measures your self-worth, like you step on there and like that kind of decides if you were like good or bad, I think the weight neutral approach is at best like it's a good break at a minimum,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to not being able to like it's a good break from that and finding value outside of the weight on the scale where because there are people that no matter how many goals you give them, whether it's strength or health or whatever, if they gain 2 pounds, like they're a failure. And I think the weight neutral approach is like, okay, we need to step away from this for a second. We still
Mm-hmm.
care about your health. We still want you to be stronger and happier and all that kind of stuff. But let's remove weighing yourself, at least for now, see how that goes, and then
Mm-hmm.
get some, value from the experience outside of did I lose 2 pounds? And then kind of
Right.
go from there. Because I think that's something that really holds a lot of people back from trying new things is that if it's not about weight loss, then like why do it? And this kind of approach is like, well, we're not going to talk about weight loss at all, and then go from there.
Mm-hmm. That is a genuinely brilliant answer to that question. I'm so pleased that whoever is going to hear this just heard exactly what you said. I could not have articulated that better myself. Switching gears as we start to wind down here, we start to wrap up this episode. Uh, we both know from our days on Clubhouse, one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that we loved in the rooms where we had any control over the room, because a lot of the times, like you said, we had like 30 seconds to talk. But when
Yeah.
we were communicating with our sort of that main crew that we had, we always sort of ran into sort of actionable items. We used to like to go around once per person and, what's an actionable item here? And I was wondering if you could do us a favor and for that woman who's just about to start string training. She's listened to this episode. She said, "Oh, that's Mark, guys, brilliant." Obviously,
Thanks,
she
Ron.
won't
Appreciate
be able
it.
to see how fabulous your hair is on the podcast, but maybe she saw the live broadcast earlier, several weeks or months ago as well. She says, "I gotta hire that Mark guy, but before that." I'm thinking about getting some exercise in until I can do that. Right?
Sure.
What would the tips be that you would give that new person in terms of introducing themselves to strength training?
Ooh, there's some good ones. I think if someone is entirely new, I think the first thing you have to make sure is that you have to like kind of be okay with being imperfect. I think a lot of people when they start want to know everything and do everything right, and when they don't do something right, like that's a failure and maybe they give up entirely. I've been training people 7+ years now, and what I would say is that the people who stick with it long term are okay with making mistakes. That they are comfortable, like when they miss a workout or the training doesn't go as expected, or they acknowledge that it happened, and then they figure out why it happened, and then they kind of go from there, like where it's not the end. So I think being okay with making mistakes in the process is not only fine, but I would say expected. Where this is a new thing, you're going to make mistakes. Maybe your form's not going to be perfect at the start, or you miss a workout, or whatever it might be. That doesn't mean that you're a failure. That just means that you're new and that like you'll get better as time goes on, and mistakes are all part of the process. And also, you have a life outside of training, so like sometimes you miss workouts, and like that's it happens. Like it's fine. I'm not going to give you a hard time about it. You shouldn't give yourself a hard time about it. Um, I think for people who, because I think strength training is also intimidating for a lot of new people as
Mm-hmm.
well. Those will be the last one I give, but I think if you give it, 3 to 4 sessions, give it a couple weeks, I've started to notice that like strength training becomes less and less intimidating as you train more and more. And so I honestly, those first couple workouts like might be intimidating. Like I don't have an answer to like make those not intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is that if you can stick with it, the longer that you strength train, the less intimidating that it will be. And the more you'll enjoy the process, the stronger you'll become. Like stick it out and don't base it off of those like first few sessions because those are usually the most intimidating, and then it
Mhm.
gets better over time.
Ah, that's great stuff, man. Um, man, what a tremendous what a tremendous episode and tremendous clarity that I think you brought to a wider audience. I am pleased to help you be an ambassador of weight neutral training. Like you said, a lot of people don't even know it's a thing,
Hmm.
particularly women who are just targeted so incessantly with the diet culture messaging from an early age. But, you know, people need to find you, Mark. And I need you to let them know. And we'll put this into the show notes. And as a function of this live broadcast, we'll make sure it goes into the upload that goes to social media sites. How can they find you? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you, aside from the questions that they may ask on social as this
Hmm.
uploads to different pages? What's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, one, I want to say it's like a pleasure being here. Like, truthfully, like in the clubhouse rooms, I always liked the input that you gave. Like, I always thought you had really good,
Ah,
well thought out answers. You like answered the like, you know, like I think what's always nice to see is like someone would ask a question and then you would like genuinely give a good answer. Like you listened to them, you thought it through before giving the advice. I really appreciate like having those people in those spaces. So like
yeah.
to say truly, it's like it's been a pleasure being here, and like I hope that we collab more in the future.
It's almost like we
Because
care, Mark. It's almost like we
yeah, you
care.
know what? Sometimes that's hard to find. Okay, like that's sometimes it doesn't always go that way,
Oh
and
man,
that's I know it's I appreciate like you know I hope we collab more in the future.
absolutely.
So the main places to find me would be so in terms of social media, I'm probably biggest on Instagram and TikTok. It's at Training Strong Women. Picture of my face, you can see me there. I have a podcast as well called the Badass Lifter Podcast, which is entirely focused on like helping beginner lifters get started. What do they need to focus on? Like, how do we start the strength training journey and also thrive in it? As well as explaining training and the concept and the without weight loss or aesthetics. So, like, I don't have any episodes that are like how to get shredded for the summer or like anything like that. Like, all of my episodes are you know like it's all about like making you stronger, helping you enjoy the process, helping you stick with training long term. Yeah, and I would say those are like the I'm on other places too, but those are like the big three for sure.
I love it. I love it. Once again, for the listeners out there and the viewers here that came to join us live, Mark Breedon, humanitarian, scholar,
Oh wow,
gentleman,
this is I'm flattered over here.
uh, follicularly blessed
Now you're choosing
with
big words I don't know. Now you're choosing
with the shiny full head of hair. If you guys only got an opportunity to listen to this podcast for no other reason, go to his social media site so you can get a glimpse of the shiny locks that he was blessed with. I appreciate you being here. We'll tune in for another episode of the podcast whenever that happens. As of this recording, I don't even have a name for it yet, so I can't tell you what podcast you just tuned into. But I'm all about imperfect action. You guys got some great information today. Mark, thank you for blessing us. Thank you for making the time to do it. I am so looking forward to the next time that we get an opportunity to collaborate. Listeners, viewers, thank you so much for being here. Until next time, let's keep it simple. Huh? Why not do that?